Parents of 3 children are in jail today after Kanawha County deputies said 2 teens were found locked inside a barn. Hannah Klein breaks down the investigation after deputies say they received a 911 call from someone concerned about the kids. A stunning find in Sissonville has led to the arrest of 2 adoptive parents.
You're being charged with a felony, child neglect, creating risk of injury.
Donald Lance and Jean Whitefeather now in jail as their children are now with CPS. It started on Monday when deputies got a call just before 6 o'clock in the evening. The 2 children were being locked in a barn at this home on Cheyenne Lane in Sissonville.
They weren't able to locate any guardians or parental figures or anybody around the residence or the barn, and started having a conversation with 2 children that were inside the barn.
Deputies eventually forced their way into the barn, where they said they found a 16-year-old girl and 14-year-old boy inside a 20 by 14-foot room. Investigators say the teens had no way to get out of the shed, with no running water, no bathroom. The girl told deputies their parents had brought them food around 6 o'clock that morning, but said her and her brother weren't allowed in the house and were locked in the barn for long periods every day. Eyewitness News spoke to neighbors who were afraid to go on camera, but claimed multiple families called police about the children's safety several times, and they are thankful they are now safe.
Well, it's a pretty bad case. It's in any type of situation like this, it's not really comparable. A horrific condition like this is just not how you want or how you would even expect children to be raised or been taken care of.
Lance and Whitefeather eventually showed up at the home. They're now charged with child neglect, creating substantial risk of injury. The mother admitted the children were left in the shed, but reportedly told deputies they, quote, liked it.
They're trying to, get the children back in better living conditions, better placement, and the detectives will continue to investigate and build this case.
In Sissonville, Hannah Klein, Eyewitness News. The Sissonville couple accused of human trafficking and forced labor were back in court today. This is the case where Donald Lance and Jeannie Whitefeather were arrested after deputies found their adopted teens locked in a barn last fall in Sissonville. But as Anna Saunders explains, today's hearing was focused on their financial situation as prosecutors consider some of their money illegal.
That's right, Gina. As new charges of human trafficking, forced labor, and civil rights violations stacked up against Whitefeather and Lance, so did their bond amount, as they are now back in jail on $500,000 cash bonds each. But the matter addressed in court today was about the first bond they posted when they were able to put down $400,000 cash back in February. This raised red flags with the prosecution, as they believe that money is contraband and are now looking to have it turned over to the state.
It's the prosecution's ultimate goal to seize the $400,000 that Whitefeather and Lance posted for bond in February. The argument is that bonds were paid by selling homes in Washington State and in Sissonville, where human trafficking occurred. But what happened today is Kanawha County Chief Circuit Court Judge Mary Claire Akers signed a protective order for that money, meaning it must stay with the sheriff's office until the courts decide if it will be seized or not.
We're not trying to forfeit the money without due process. We just want to protect it and preserve it until we've had a chance to litigate the claim.
A 16-count indictment was recently returned against Lance and Whitefeather, going far beyond their initial charge of child neglect. Investigators now say the couple sought out and adopted 5 black children from a shelter, targeting them for their race to do forced labor. The complaint said Lance and Whitefeather first had them at this 80-acre ranch in Washington State and then moved to the Sissonville home. This is where deputies, while doing a welfare check last fall, found 2 teenagers locked in a barn in what investigators called deplorable conditions. After they were arrested, the 2 sold the Washington home for about $700,000 and the Sissonville home for about $300,000. Prosecutors believe they used that money for bond.
Now, with this $400,000 now protected, it can't be used at all right now while the protective order is in place. But if the state wins out in this and the forfeiture is granted, it could possibly be treated like drug seizure money, where percentages go to arresting agencies and the prosecution, or it is common for human trafficking money to go to the victims, which in this case would be the kids. All of that pending how this plays out in court alongside the criminal investigation.
You must learn.
ladies and gentlemen, out of all the stories that I've done as a content creator, this is one of the most disturbing stories that I've ever done. You got 2 white adopted parents was charged in putting 5 black adopted kids into a barn, forced them into slavery and human trafficking these kids. But my question is, why did the mainstream media even talk about this? Now, they can talk about everything else, right? They can have entertainment like Pop the Balloon stuff or Love and Hip Hop or The Real Housewives, right? But this case should have been worldwide, mainstream. Because not only you dealing with, you're dealing with kids, but you're dealing with black kids. But then they don't care about that, right? They don't care about that. They're black kids, whatever, right? But they should have been in the mainstream news. They should have been on CNN. They should have been on MSNBC, Fox News. All the mainstream media should have reported this story. And luckily, these kids are okay. It could have been worse. So now you got 2 white. And you heard what one of the parents says, that the reason why they put them in the shed because, quote, they liked it. How can a child like being locked inside the shed? Really? So they found 2 black kids. One is a girl, one is a boy. But luckily, they're okay. But again, it could have been worse. And see, again, this is West Virginia. And I'm going to tell you something about that state. And I've learned about West Virginia because that's where my father's side of the family is originally from. Even though West Virginia is supposed to be a Democratic state, when it comes to black people there, they mistreated them like dirt. We'll put it like that. And that's what happened to my family, who was brutally unalived by his white neighbor, and yet they put the judge decided that the neighbor, and I'm just changing the subject for a second, but they basically saying that the judge decided he was incompetent to stand trial, and now he spent the rest of his life in a mental institution. But watch how they play this story, right? Because this is how West Virginia is. They're going to play this story. Well, they lock these kids up, but they're going to give them a slap on the wrist. Watch what I'm saying. They don't get no harsher penalties, because this is not just, lock the kids up. This is human trafficking. There should have been harsher penalties than that. But again, they're gonna basically sweep that under the rug, let it slide, blah blah blah. They're gonna do some time, but not as much. And they're gonna feel sympathetic because guess why? You know why? They're Caucasian, they're white. Now, if the role were reversed, if these were black couples decided to adopt a white children, right? And they decided to put these white kids in their shed, the same thing they did to that black kids, take these white parents into that black adopted kids, right? If the black parents did the same thing, they would have been under the prison. They would never ever get out, ever. But this is human trafficking. And they need to take this story seriously, because there could have been like more kids involved in this. Yeah, the parents is in jail at the moment, but the criminal justice system here is either either or. But these black kids shouldn't even been. I mean, this is what's so controversial about this, that the celebrities and white people want to adopt our kids, black kids. But the way they treated these black kids as slaves tell you something. So we can watch Love and Hip Hop, we can watch Basketball Wives, we can watch all these reality shows because it's entertainment. But when stories with stories like that, we should have been outraged. We should have been appalled, because that's our kids. These children shouldn't be like this. But again, it shows you that the mainstream media doesn't care about stories like this. Oh, but it care about, what's going on in Israel, what's going on, when it comes to the election and everything else. Right? Other stories, yeah. But when it comes to important stories like that, how it's human trafficking, have these kids locked up in sheds, and that's not a story? You mean to tell me CNN ain't picking that story up? You mean to tell me that MSNBC didn't pick that story up, or Fox News, or any other mainstream media ain't picking up this story like this? Oh, black kids, oh yeah, there ain't no story. Whatever. They're just black children, whatever. But if it's Chinese kids or Jewish kids, even white kids, I guarantee you it'll be on the New York Times, it'll be on the Washington Post, it'll be on every mainstream media, which is newspapers and television stations all across the country. But since this is the black kids, they care less about that. That's not news to them. But those kids could be unalive if it wasn't for the law enforcement officers broke into that shed. And which really and this one parent had the audacity to say, well, they liked it where they are. Are you serious? Really? This is sickening. So adoption is important, but at the same time, people just need to do background checks on parents before they even adopt anyone. Black and white, but especially black kids. We cannot trust a person unless they do a lot of background checks, had they had a criminal record, blah, 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 blah. But some laws in the state don't do that, and they need to. So y'all let me know what you think about this in the comments.